Good morning from WKYT News. I'm Bill Bryant, and we welcome you to Kentucky Newsmakers. Kentucky's next Education Commissioner, Dr. Robbie Fletcher, addressed the media this week. He takes over the important job of running schools on July 1st, and we'll hear from him later on Kentucky Newsmakers. But first, Kentucky's primary election is coming up on Tuesday, May 21st. But it's not as simple as it used to be. There's early voting before that. It's key to know the times and locations for that. And Kentucky's partisan primary is closed, meaning voters have to be registered in a particular party to vote in that primary. That's not the only challenge facing Fayette County Clerk Susan Lamb these days. The state's vehicle registration system has an interesting rollout going on. Even though it's based in Frankfort, it's the local county clerks who've had to deal with the frustrations and the long lines. Fayette County Clerk Susan Lamb is joining us. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
We'll do a discussion on the auto registration in a minute. Let's talk about the primary, fast approaching.
Yes.
It's important to say that all elections are important, and this one will in fact nominate candidates from president to Congress to the state legislature, even some local offices, and yet it's been very quiet out there, right?
Yes, I agree.
What are your comments about this upcoming primary?
Well, just from the absentee ballot turnout alone, it has been very quiet. We have had, in my professional opinion, a very poor turnout of returned absentee ballots, and so I'm always hoping that there will be an onslaught before the 21st, but it has been slow. The preparation continues to be just the same as if it were going to be 100% turnout, as if it were going to be a 30% turnout. So my staff and my team, we are prepared, and we are excited with some new locations again this year for early voting, and I'm pleased to have the partnership with the libraries, and we are going to we're going to have 6 libraries open to the public for early voting, which is May 16th, 17th, and 18th.
That is the no excuse voting, where anybody can go in and on that Thursday, Friday, and Saturday before the election, right?
That is correct. Yeah. Yes.
And where will those new locations be?
They are at all 6 libraries, all of the public libraries here in Fayette County. They are at the North Side Library. They are at the East Side. They're the central downtown branch. Mm-hmm. So if anybody's downtown working, they can walk to the poll. It will be the Marksbury branch, family branch, and the Beaumont branch, and Tate's Creek branch. All of the libraries this year are going to be transitioned into the early voting for those 3 days. And then again on Election Day, this is really exciting this year, that this election, we are going to have all those libraries open as vote centers on Election Day from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Now Thursday, Friday, Saturday, it's 8:30 to 4:30. But then we will also have our 286 precincts on Election Day.
All right. But those precincts will be in different places. I mean, there won't be 286 locations, right? A lot of those are merged.
Right. We have about 135 voting locations on Election Day, and that is in addition to the 6 libraries.
Does it cost just as much to run an election where very few people show up as it does if there was a heavy turnout?
It most certainly does. We have to predict how many the voter turnout, so that for the precincts that we can make sure that we have the proper number of ballots printed. And then, of course, at the vote centers, we don't have, it's print on demand, so we don't have to worry about that cost. Someday down the future, maybe, if we're lucky, we can go to all vote centers, and we will save a significant amount of money from printing all those ballots that are unused.
Again, 6 to 6 on Election Day, but on the early voting days, 8:30 to 4:30.
Yes, sir.
At those library locations. We'd remind our viewers outside of Fayette County, by the way, check locally to see what may be going on there with early voting. It is required that it's Thursday, Friday, and Saturday.
That is correct.
But those hours may differ, and your locations will be different in different counties. So the primary election then May 21st, and how does that day roll out?
Well, it's exciting. We actually we're finishing up training all of our election officers this week. Friday night will be the final training session for all of our over 1,100 election officers. And so then on we'll go to bed real early on the 20th, and we'll rise and shine and be in the office close to 5, some 4:30, and we'll have our techs that will be ready to go and roll out with the sheriffs if we have problems with the election officers when they're setting up their materials and their equipment and everything at all 135 locations. And I myself and Sheriff Witt and the 2 commissioners, we all convene in the County Board of Election at 6 a.m. on Tuesday, May 21st. We will stay in session all day long. We will address any issues that come along the path. We will also finalize opening up the remainder of the absentee ballots that come in that day and check the ballot box at 6 p.m. and then finish that. It will be a good long day. It probably won't be as busy as it will be in November, but we're prepared and nonetheless, and we're excited, and I'm excited about it.
I mean, it really has the potential to be very quiet for this primary and then extraordinarily busy in November, right?
I think it is a completely fair statement.
Yeah, so it's really a different kind of year. What do voters need to bring to the polling place to be eligible to vote?
They need to bring their photo ID. It has to be a U.S. document, a U.S. or a Commonwealth of Kentucky document with a photo and their name. It can be a passport. It can be a military ID. We want to make sure that people can be registered. They can come in and actually bring an out-of-state ID, but they have to have their address has to be verified in the system. So
yeah, people want to know these days. How do you make sure somebody didn't vote in another state, or how do you make sure that somebody didn't vote at one of these other voting centers and then go to another one and cast another ballot?
Well, within the county, within the state of Kentucky, our poll pads will tell us if this voter has voted already. So it doesn't connect to other states, but it does tell within the state of Kentucky. So I know that there are situations where somebody has brought in a ID and has provided the different address, and that is what our audit and our inquiry is. After the election is over with, we go through all of the sheriff's reports, and then we follow up with the grand jury, and that has been a unique learning situation for me, and I really appreciate that it's a very thorough investigation of situations. So I feel strongly about our what we have in place in our laws in Kentucky, and we work collaboratively with counties and state
You
officials.
feel there is integrity in Kentucky's ballot?
Absolutely, yes.
So the absentee voting is underway now, right?
Yes,
People
sir.
can get their ballot,
Yes.
has to be returned by election day, and then there's walk-in absentee as well, right?
The absentee with an excuse is actually 6 days, and that will begin on, I always have to look at my numbers here, my dates. It starts on May 8th through the 10th and May 13th through the 15th. That is actually in our office. They come into the election department on the second floor. They'll sign in there, and then they can go down. But they do have to have an excuse, and those excuses are outlined on our website, the qualifying reasons that they could come in that day, any of those 6 days, and vote within our office.
Madam Clerk, this is such a contentious time. What is proper etiquette around the polling place?
Proper etiquette is if you are there trying to tell someone that how to vote, just don't do it. 100 feet is the law. We work closely with the sheriff's office, and we send out deputy sheriffs if there's something being reported. We train our poll workers to recognize when somebody is doing something wrong, and they call us immediately, and we try to be the ones to bring the authorities out so that the poll workers are not always facing bad issues or anything like that. But also just know that we just have to be respectful. We all have our different opinions, and we have our right to have those different opinions, and so we have to be respectful of each other and know that that's how this world is, and it's our democracy, and it's a good thing to have different opinions.
Do you anticipate having any staffing issues? I know you're obviously set for this one, and it's
Yes.
been probably a challenge,
Right.
but for the fall?
I really don't. I mean, what I think is unique is when we set our election officer list for the primary, that's the same list for the entire year. So it's for both the primary and the general election. And so I after having visited each one of our training sessions with our election officers, you know, we have people in Fayette County that really care about our process and want to be a part of it. And so I really feel like that we're in really good shape, and I'm very proud of that.
All right, so Election Day coming up May 21st with the early voting ahead of that, and hopefully folks do turn out and express themselves in those primaries. Now, the changeover of Kentucky's auto registration system has had its problems, to say the least. How much of a challenge has that been for your office, and isn't it true that it is still ongoing?
It is. We are able to run our transactions. We are working through that. I think that our dealer transactions have been the most trying, and we're still working through that. But just alone yesterday, of course it was April 30th, the last day of the month, but we actually processed 2,583 motor vehicle transactions yesterday in our office alone. As you can imagine, our lines were very long yesterday. Today they're not, and I'm glad. What the public has to know, and I'm learning about different things that are misconceptions, and you know, we are all used to getting those little postcard reminders in the mail that tell us, oh, your registration is due, and it's due by the end of April 30th.
And that doesn't come from your office?
It does not come from our office, and so it comes from a state office, and those postcards, they've had some complications this year, and so the postcards were not sent out in a timely fashion, and most people that had April birthdays or April renewals, they didn't get them until Monday or Tuesday of this week, and so I think that contributed to the large number of people that came to the office yesterday. The other thing is that I have no jurisdiction over what's stated on those cards nor when they're mailed, and I told that about probably 1,000 times yesterday in the office, to be honest. The reminder cards are simply just that. They are for reminding you. You know when your birthday is, you know if your renewal is due on your birthday, go that month. You don't have to have that card. That postcard is just a simple reminder. Some people yesterday thought that they had to have the card in order to renew their registration.
Well, it will say bring this card and
it does.
And
it does.
Your registration and your proof of insurance, right?
It does. It does, and it's very important to make sure that you have. If you have your registration, it's good if you have your original from last year, from the year prior. If you don't have that original registration, it's not the end of the world. If your name is the person's name on that title and that registration, you can come in and you can pay a $6 fee. You can get a duplicate registration and you can still process it. The other thing that we've had a sticky wicket with is the insurance verification. You know, in the old system, most everybody's insurance was verified. In this new system, we started all brand new. So we're having to verify everybody's insurance, and we can't do that by you bringing it in on your phone. You have to have a paper copy. And then to further complicate things, if your insurance doesn't verify in the system, then we have to have verification, proof of insurance from within 45 days from the day that you are registering your vehicle, your renewal.
Madam Clerk, it must be easy to empathize and understand the frustrations that people have when they are used to these days being in a more paperless society. They do hold up their phones at the coffee shop or the store, and it takes care of everything, and and those companies have all the information they need.
Right.
But evidently the state and the locals are not at that point.
We aren't, and I had a gentleman yesterday in the line ask if we took. It wasn't Venmo. It was Apple Pay, and I said, no, sir, we can't. We don't have the ability to do that. I will say that this new system called Canvas, it is bringing us into the 20th century. However, I think we have to get this set, and it's going to take us the entire 2024, the whole year, to put our hands on every single vehicle that we has to be registered in Fayette County, and this is across the state. Mm-hmm. And we were, this was confirmed at a meeting we had last week. We thought this was the case, but now we know for fact. Until every car is touched in this state, we're going to have glitches, we're going to have bugs, and we're not going to know about it until we actually go in and try to renew a car and there's something that appears to us. And then we have to react and ask for the state to work with us on getting it repaired.
And all you can do is ask for patience.
Yes, yes, patience and more patience.
Well, we appreciate you coming in. So two very busy things going on right now with the auto registration, and certainly the primary coming up, and then the general election in the fall. So it's a busy year for you.
Yes,
well, thank you for coming by.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
All right.
Thank you.
Stay with us now. We'll hear from Kentucky's new Education Commissioner. Kentucky Newsmakers is coming back in just a moment. Welcome back to Kentucky Newsmakers from WKYT. Kentucky's next Education Commissioner introduced himself to the public this week and talked about his priorities. Dr. Robbie Fletcher will soon leave the job of running the Lawrence County School District and will become head of all Kentucky schools.
I'm very student-oriented. I enjoy kids. That's the hardest part about coming to this job is I'll move a little farther away from that day-to-day interaction with students. But that will be one of my goals, is to be part of of each school system and to be all in KY. To start out, there's 5 things I'd like to start with as commissioner. And the very first thing is strategic planning. Our Kentucky Board of Education has a great set of missions and goals right now that really center around vibrant learning experiences for our students. Then the second centered topic would be innovations in accountability. One of the things, and you'll hear me say this several times, is when I walk out of this role in 4, 8 years, ever how long that lasts, I'd like to walk out with an accountability system that everyone believes in. When I say believes in an accountability system, I'm talking about one that impacts instruction on a daily basis. But also, 2, takes into account for what the students want to do or what the local community values. So through different topics like profile of a learner and things of that nature. Then of course we want to also make sure we strengthen our collaboration with communities. So the Kentucky Board of Education with their mission and vision is really centered around those 3 main topics. And also the Kentucky Department of Education has a strategic plan that aligns pretty well with that. But we want to make sure that we start off by looking at that strategic plan and make sure the 2 align very closely. After that strategic planning and working with all the advisory councils, there are some commissioner advisory councils. I have to get used to that. Then there's also some state mandated councils that we'll be working with to get their input. But also the Kentucky United We Learn Council, who is doing some great work when it comes to accountability. So looking forward to working with them. Then as we move along is to make sure that we put that strategic plan together. Now, for transparency, it will take me a little bit to make sure I understand everything that's in my role. I've learned a lot. I think it's a blessing being a superintendent from Kentucky because I'll come in ahead of the game in some things. But other areas too, when you go to a new organization, there's a lot of things you need to learn. So that strategic planning will be the very first part. Where do we want to go and how are we going to get there? The other part that I've talked about with the Kentucky Board of Education, also with the Kentucky Department of Education, is our state mandated schools. I want to be on campus with our School for the Deaf and the School for the Blind. I want to be there to talk with them, to be with them, to be able to have that input, to see what it's like. Because we want those schools to be lighthouses. We want them to be models for the entire country. So I want to be a part of that state-operated school systems when we talk about especially the School for the Deaf and the School for the Blind. The other part, I think the Kentucky Department of Education does an excellent job of sending out information. But do we have a real true communication plan? In other words, how should we better communicate with superintendents? How do we better communicate with students? How do we better communicate with teachers? And again, I think we do a great job of sending out information, and I believe that as far as the amount of information that comes out, KDE is excellent. But are we communicating in a way that's effective for the correct audience? So that's one other priority we'll look at. Also too, we're a service organization. I think the Kentucky Department of Education has done a great job of being a service organization for our schools. I think Interim Commissioner Kenny has done an excellent job of taking that idea, promoting that idea, and making it possible. but hopefully we want to keep improving. How can we better serve the students in our Commonwealth? How can we better serve our school districts? So being a service organization also is a top priority. Then lastly, I want to visit schools. I'm from Eastern Kentucky. I've visited a lot of school systems. I want to be in Western Kentucky. I want to visit those schools. I want to be on campus. And you'll never know, you may see me show up for a football game on a Friday night. I'm a big fan. As a matter of fact, academic teams are a big part of what I do. I love being on the moderating for academic teams. So when it comes down to Governor's Cup time, I'd love to be out there moderating again. As a matter of fact, I probably already have a couple invitations, so we'll be looking at those kind of things too. But the reason for that is I want to have that personal contact with students. Leaving the classroom was the toughest decision I ever made, because you had that one-on-one, day-to-day opportunity to make a difference in a child's life. But each step that you take away from the classroom, you have an opportunity to make decisions that will impact all students. If you become a principal, you really impact that building. As you become a superintendent, of course the district, and now as commissioner, our goal will be to make sure we make a positive impact on every child's life. When we talk about long range, there's three things I want to talk a little bit about. Is when you talk about accountability already and other topics, Kentucky's at the forefront. We want to make sure that we stay there in any area, all areas that we can. We want to make sure that Kentucky's in part of all the discussions when it comes to innovative accountability in other areas. So that'll be another priority long range, is to make sure that we're at the forefront when it comes to a national scene in education. The second thing, of course, I've alluded to this already. I would love to be able to say once Superintendent Fletcher becomes commissioner, that we start working, which has already been some great work, on accountability. Again, as I said a little bit earlier, what type of accountability system will make a day-to-day impact on instruction? Also, what type of accountability system will take into effect or into account what the local community values in their education system too? Again, some great work going on, but I'd love to be able to put that together as something that we can all value. And then as part of the last part I would talk about is financial resources. Our state legislature made a huge investment in education, and I'm thankful for that. It may be the best education budget I've seen in my time, but I will always ask for more resources. What better investment can we have than in our children? That includes things like teacher salaries. If we ever get to the point where we're the top 10 in the nation, I may quit advocating for teacher raises, but also not only for teachers, but also for our classified staff. So you'll see me a lot of times in the next 2, 3, 4 years, and maybe beyond, advocating for resources. But I want to make it very clear, I'm very thankful for the investment that our legislators made already in our education system, because it is an excellent education budget. We hope that we can continue to do better, and I look forward to that partnership. So the partnership with the state legislature will be key in making sure all this happens. We need a revival when it comes to teachers. I'll share with you that the reason why I'm here in front of you is because of public education. The very first time I was on an airplane, the very first time I saw flat ground, the very first Major League Baseball game I saw, the first body of water bigger than the Big Sandy, was all with a teacher that invested in students to take us places as part of an academic team. Those are the stories we need to hear more about. What teachers and what people are making such a difference in students to inspire others to want to be in our field, in our education. So our strength is we have the people. Our strength is we have great teachers. We have great classified people. I have some of the best bus drivers you'll ever find in Lawrence County. But also that's the same kind of things you'll see across the state. But we need to tell those stories. Now, it also comes with pay raises. Being an advocate, again, there was a certain percentage added into our state budget for SEEK, and also additions into Tier 1 to help those more property poor districts, that maybe they can offer some more salaries. But we want to make sure that we also invest in our people that are going to work with our most prized resource, and that's our students.
And Dr. Fletcher will take over as Kentucky Education Commissioner on July 1st. We'll be right back with a word about next week's guest on Kentucky Newsmakers in a moment. Welcome back now to Kentucky Newsmakers from WKYT. Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear is our scheduled guest next week, and of course we have a lot to talk about. We'll discuss the legislative session, the state's new budget, and his recent overseas trip to try to bring more jobs to Kentucky. We'll also, of course, talk about the just completed Kentucky Derby weekend and its impact here on the Commonwealth. Don't forget, again, our primary is coming up later this month, and we'll keep you up to date on WKYT.com and on the WKYT News app. Thank you so much for joining us for this edition of Kentucky Newsmakers, and we hope you make it a good week ahead.